Welcome to Matters of Decorum. I'm Scott Corum. This is what matters to me. I've talked a bit in the past about using inspiration from books and movies to develop adventures and campaigns for role-playing games. So I thought I would talk about a movie that has always been very inspirational to me and the process that I went through to bring it to life in a role-playing game and how that went. One of my favorite underrated movies of all time is Disney's The Black Hole. The Black Hole is a weird movie. If I were to try and describe it today to someone who is savvy with more modern films, I would describe The Black Hole as Disney's Event Horizon. It's tonally all across the board. It is beautiful. It's one of the last movies, I think it may have been the last movie made with analog matte paintings, actual mattes painted on glass with real paint by hand. If it's not the last movie made with matte painting, it was the last movie Disney made with matte painting. Since then we've gone to digital mattes and digital art, and while there's still hand art involved, this is the last of the old school sci-fi movies. Made to capitalize on the popularity of Star Wars, The Black Hole was strange. Because you had incredibly dark, gruesome plot elements right next to cartoony robots voiced by Roddy McDowell and Slim Pickens. Yeah, big eyes and all-round features and glib lines, and then you had Maximilian, the evil robot, who literally cut people's guts out with spinning blades. You had weird dialogue and childish platitudes on one side, and then one of the cute robots is talking about the crew of a ship that's been converted into mindless cyborgs, and in a Disney movie says, "For those poor souls, death is the only release." That line sums it up pretty well. The plot is fairly straightforward. The characters are over the top. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful space movie. And the ending makes no sense. The ending made sense to me once. Now the ending makes sense to me. In the theater, when I saw it as a child, the ending didn't make sense. And I didn't care because it was pretty and I was a kid. And I watched it as an adult, and the ending made no sense. Then one night, I was having my first taste of absinthe. And I'd had my first taste of a number of different absinthes because, well, you have to compare absinthes after all. And I'd had about 5 shots of absinthe by the time I got to the end of The Black Hole. And the ending has made sense ever since. I'm not going to talk too much about the plot and storyline at this point. I'd seen it as a kid, and when we moved into this apartment, something like 20 years ago, I want to say. I was at 96, 97. Yeah, around 20 years ago, more. We first got satellite TV, and one of the first things I was able to watch on that was The Black Hole. It was showing a lot at the time, and man, it gripped me all over again because it's so batshit insane in so many ways. I mean, a lot of people think it's boring, and there are certainly parts of it that are, but conceptually, it should never have been boring. So I've got a really good group of players at the time. We're a good gaming group, um, and GURPS Traveler had just come out, and I wanted to run something. I wanted to take those concepts from this dark, strange movie, and I wanted to lay them out. So I told folks I want to run a black hole game, make up characters for GURPS Traveler. Folks who were familiar with the black hole made characters that kind of fit into a one of the roles of the heroes of the movie. We had our psionicist, we had our robot, and we had our pilots, and great group of folks. Not all of whom are with us anymore. Goodbye, Ryan. But we showed up, and I had been busy because I had this movie full of batshit insanity, and there were 2 or 3 spaceships involved and some robots. So I did some design. GURPS vehicles will always, if I hadn't written a spreadsheet to do the work, I never would be able to wrap my head around it. That's one reason for the vehicle design rules in games that I write being way simpler. But also one reason that I've got it stuck in my head that vehicle rules need to be a little complex to cover all the stuff that you can possibly do with it. But I tackled GURPS. I wrote fresh spreadsheets for this. I made the spaceships. I mapped the spaceships. A lot of time, and there's not that much available on the internet back then for this particular type of stuff. Right now, I could pull up a floor plan for the Cygnus if I, typed out floor plan for the Cygnus. It's out there. But back then, there's some work involved. Rebuilding Maximilian is a robot that made sense because Maximilian is one of the most terrifying movie villains of all time and amazingly iconic. If the movie had been better, we would be talking about Maximilian as much as we talk about Darth Vader these days because he's that good of a movie villain. The mad scientist, Hans Reinhardt, the captain of the Cygnus, was not nearly as much of a presence as his robot second in command. So I built all this stuff, and then I just pulled the plot whole cloth from the movie. Added some Traveler trimmings to make it more Traveler-y. Traveler being my first real role-playing game. And boom, in we go. The party is on patrol. They're doing some stellar cartography and mapping a sector that isn't well mapped. And, well, in the middle of it, black hole. First time it's discovered, so someone's going to get a bonus because Explorer Corps pays a little bit extra when you find stellar dangers or something that can be studied, except there's a weird thing outside of this black hole. There is a ship right on the edge of Roche's limit. No ship should be able to stay in that location. There's no technology that they know of that can allow a ship to not only be in that space but maintain that position without being crushed and spaghettified straight into the black hole. The group gets a little bit closer. They've got to get what scans they can of this thing because, well, Explorer Corps, if they don't get the data, they're not earning their pay. And get caught in the black hole's gravitational pull. Their only chance, and this took a lot of rolls, which I wanted them to make, but you've got to make it rough. They managed to get in the shadow of the ship hovering over the black hole and board it. It looks dead, No lights, no landing lights, no external power signatures, except for some kind of shield that it's generating until they start heading for its docking port, and then all the lights come on. There's someone home. It's not answering hails, but they can see it and they can land. All the landing facilities perfectly functional. On board, robots. Nothing but robots, a couple of different varieties. There's the security robots that are humanoid and hard-shelled and with built-in weaponry and lots of sensors. And then there's another kind of robot. They're more artistic, fanciful. Also humanoid, but they look like 16th century monks. No robes and no face, but a chrome sensor plate where the face would be. Just a featureless, reflective, curved surface. You look in their face and you're seeing your own, distorted. Security robots escort the crew, after securing the ship, to the bridge, where they see the one person who is not a robot, Hans Reinhardt. People make rolls. They look into the records that they've got, and the ship, the Cygnus, is a science vessel that went missing a couple of decades ago. Sent into this sector to investigate anomalies, maybe look for a black hole, because it's got specialized equipment for looking at them. Reinhardt has been here that entire time. He tells the crew that he sent his own crew back when they realized they could not break away from the gravitational pull of the black hole. He made a leap of inspiration and altered his ship's shields so that they would be protected from the mass amounts of gravitons and Higgs boson particles pouring off of the black hole. It would allow them to maintain their position, but they could never leave because of the power requirement just to keep the ship safe. He sends his crew away, according to him, and asks how they are. Well, a quick library search on what's available to the party's ship through their communicators, and you find out that that crew never arrived back. There is no record of any of the launches from the Cygnus ever making it anywhere. They never made it back to any government, anyone who contributed records to the library. To which the response from Dr. Reinhardt is, "It's a pity. They're such a good crew." Party starts to explore the ship a little bit, encountering Reinhardt's second in command, Maximilian, a higher grade of security robot. The thing is a tank with hover treads instead of feet, and a vicious assortment of weaponry. Why? Well, to keep the other robots in line. Sometimes here the gravitational distortions and the energy usage and the weird stuff along the EM band, and standard robots can tend to go a little crazy. You might want to be careful of your robot, because you never know. Maximilian keeps me safe. Feel free to get any parts you need to repair your ship so that you can leave, and I will maintain things here. The crew go about the ship. They find some unusual things. They find all the parts they need to repair the minor damage to their ship, and they figured maybe they can boost away from the black hole if they stay in the shadow of Reinhardt's ship long enough. Awesome. They see a bunch of the monk robots committing another one of the monk robots to space. Coffin, 2 lines of robots respectfully facing it, not repairing it, not dismantling it for parts. They can't have a lot of resources on this ship, so they couldn't imagine why they would throw a perfectly good bunch of robot parts into space as opposed to recycling it. They find that the engines of the Cygnus are perfectly fine. They're being upgraded, just about done, and they could absolutely fire even with the power requirements from the shield. They take scans of the shields because the graviton shields, that's an amazing accomplishment. And if they can get that back to the Explorer Corps, they will be rich for the rest of their lives. But they start to put two and two together. They tackle one of the monk robots somewhere outside of range of the ship's sensors when Maximilian's not around, and remove the faceplate to discover a human face behind it, bereft of life and emotion. It's been lobotomized. It's one of Reinhardt's original crew. All the monk robots are what is left of Reinhardt's original crew. The story comes out in logs and computer terminal entries, and finally from Reinhardt himself, who has decided to stop giving a fuck what the party thinks of him. He found the black hole, and his stroke of inspiration to make the shield modifications, that was just the start of it. If he could maintain a position on the edge of Roche's limit, he could maintain the Cygnus through the black hole. He could find out what's on the other side. His crew disagreed with him and attempted to mutiny. He had the security robots subdue them, and one by one, he lobotomized them, replaced their frontal lobes with circuitry to allow them to continue to serve their functions, and bit by bit, over time, replaced the rest of them with robotic components, cyborgs, mindless, undead cyborgs. Reinhardt is just about ready to go through the black hole. Party couldn't have arrived at a worse time. Sorry, I guess you are coming with me. This is suicide to any rational mind. Party does not react well. Reinhardt gets kicked in the groin and the group leaves rapidly, being pursued by Maximilian. Some rolls are made to use the ship's transport system. There's a cart that runs the length of the ship through a transparent tube on the outside of the hull. This is not a smart transport system to move across a vast, huge ship like this. It should be on the inside, but it did save space, and it is pretty. And it is really dangerous because Maximilian does not care about maintaining the integrity of the hull or air systems at this point in time. Reinhardt's fine on the bridge. As the group is fleeing, hoping to get to their ship and get away before Reinhardt starts his insanity, Reinhardt starts his insanity. Ship starts to go through the black hole. It's going about as well as you'd expect. Reinhardt's clever, but not that clever. And the Cygnus starts to buckle. One of the first things that goes, transport tubes on the outside of the ship. These big, clear Lexan tubes with atmosphere in them, so they're pressurized and just trying to explode in the vacuum of space. And the ship twists, and they start to crack, and the group, some of them are in their spacesuits, some of them aren't. It's not going to go well. And my friend Brian Sullivan, playing the pilot, he's got a lever. This is a tracked vehicle. It is a cart on a track with a motor on it and a lever that has stop and go faster. That is the sum total of his controls. He wants to make a piloting roll to avoid hitting the area of the pipe ahead of them that is buckled, that will kill them all. Now, as a game master, I don't know how they're going to get out of this. I really don't. I plan the disaster, and I like to let the players figure out their own way. This is where I really encourage creative thinking. If you can think of a way out of it that I haven't, More power to you. This is a storytelling exercise. This is the part of the story that you're going to tell. I've set it up. What do you do? Brian wants to make a roll to drift the rail car so that they can, without slowing down, get inside the vessel through one of the emergency ports. Physics says no. Engineering says not only no, but hell no. So I say, give me a roll. In GURPS, all skill checks are done by a roll of 3d6. The lower, the better. A natural 18 is a critical failure. A natural 3 is the best of all possible successes. The odds of rolling a natural 3, 1 in 6 to the third power. Not great. Could happen. The odds of rolling an 18 are the same. And this is when Brian shows the magic that Brian was. Describes the action, and his piloting action included yelling at everyone else on the cart to lean right, hard. And he rolls. The margin of success can be important in GURPS. You keep track of it. What did you make it by? You've got a skill of 14, you roll a 7, you've made it by 7. It's a pretty good margin. You're doing pretty well. I had assigned a penalty to this roll. I did not tell them what it was, because I really didn't want them to die. But reasonably, doing something that is completely impossible, minus 10, not unreasonable for a completely impossible task. You're using the equipment in a way it was never meant to be used, in ways that physics and engineering are telling you it can't be used, and you don't care, you're the pilot, and you're going to make it do this. And you get everyone else involved in the action. His piloting skill was somewhere around a 17, about as good as you could possibly get it. He pushed the rules to get everything up that high. And he rolled a 6. He made it by 11. I'd assessed in my head a minus 10, although I was willing to give it a little wiggle room, but nah, he made it with some to spare. They destroy the cart by turning it 90 degrees on the rails, leave a trail of sparks that blinds Maximilian, who is right behind them, for a few seconds as they do not pull it into the emergency hatch, but he stops dead smack in front of it. Everyone dives in. Cygnus is falling apart. They are dead. The front of the ship is starting to spaghettify, and Reinhardt is screaming his lungs out. The group dives into their ship. Their engineer does a Hail Mary, takes the scans they took of the shields on the Cygnus, and takes what parts he can, sacrificing a couple of the ship's lesser systems, like life support, and adapts their shields as they're pulling out of the Cygnus's dock. The shadow from the Cygnus is gone. Its shields aren't going to last that long. They've got one chance to do something. They've got a scan of Reinhardt's engines. They've got a copy of his math. One chance. One chance. They're not getting away from the black hole. Reinhardt might have been just clever enough. The Cygnus may just have been too big to make the trip. But their ship, their little 50-year-old retrofit scout patrol vessel, maybe. They took the chance. Now, here is where the film failed me. As everything up till here has been more or less an element of what was happening in the movie. Yeah, like I said, strangely dark and gruesome. But when they went through the black hole in the movie, they didn't know what was going to happen at that point when they wrote the thing. They Hail Married something really esoteric and mythical, and it worked for the movie in a strange way that only functions mentally when you're on absinthe. But in a role playing game at this point in time, something's got to happen. And with this group of players, and with this situation, you all die is an option. You know, I famously ended a game at Gen Con with the whole party dying. Total party kill. Um, Not my fault. You can ask anyone there. That was not my fault. But none of the players present would have binged me for killing them all at that point. They were flying a ship into a black hole. This is everything you're told not to do. There is no reason this should have worked. So they started making rolls. Now, in a lot of more modern role-playing games, there are tools in the system for modifying your probabilities. Now, the victory system has risk, and you can use that to give yourself bonuses or even to re-roll a failed roll. You're just burning your risk to do it. Now you get fate points or force points. You've got ways that, okay, I'm going to hedge this up. I'm going to make my probability better. There are only a couple of ways to do that in GURPS, and it all boils down to the roll anyway. If you are one of those characters with luck on the character sheet, if you've got a character that has that advantage, you can roll your dice 3 times and take the best of those once every half hour or once every hour, depending on what level of the advantage you've got. And only one person in the group had that. For everyone else, you shore up your rolls. You collect your bonuses, and you factor in your penalties, and you get a target number, and you roll that number or less on 3d6, or you fail. This was a whole party effort. Pilot, co-pilot, engineer, everyone had to get involved at some level to get their ship through a black hole safely, or at least intact. Everyone made that roll, and there were penalties that were ridiculous. It was not easy, and it shouldn't have been. At that moment, the rolls had to convey the tension. You're flying into a black hole. You're all going to die. One chance, how do you get out of it? And they threw me suggestions, and I took them and ran with them, and okay, make the rolls. All came down to make the rolls. And they did. They did. They survived it, and then I had to figure out, the hell does that mean? And I had to figure it out fast because I didn't know. Now, like the authors of The Black Hole, like the people who made the movie, by the time they got to that scene, they had no idea what was going on. They didn't know what was going to happen if someone actually made it through the black hole. Neither did I. They started off around the Spinward Marches, Spiral Arm of the Galaxy, Edgeward. So the first thing they notice is they don't die. You've made it through. Your shield generator is kind of fried, but you can get back up. The second thing you notice is it's hella radioactive out there. You are getting more rads on the hull than you have ever seen. Oh, and all of the cockpit glass and all of your ports have polarized so hard you don't think that it'll ever become transparent again. It has all gone dead black obsidian. There's not only a crap ton of radiation out there, there's a crap ton of visible light, and they have no idea what's going on. So they get on sensors, and the sensors are barely working. Again, baffles, automatic baffles in the sensor systems designed to keep the sensors from shorting out as a result of too much input have kind of kicked in. They have to work around the system. It takes them a minute, which is about what they've got because their shielding is fried and they're not going to have protection from that level of radiation for very long. They detect another black hole, and another one, and a couple after that, and the one that they just came out of. They are in the core of the Milky Way. They are in an area that is mostly black holes and gamma radiation spewing out of them horrifically, and the light coming off of the event horizons as it's accelerated to just about past the speed of light. It is a bright field full of dark holes, and they cannot survive here for long. I could have left it there. That would have been kind of awesome. But not with these guys. It's one thing about the groups that I have run with for a fairly long period of time is that they learn that I am never going to give them a situation that there is no way out of. I will give them a situation that there is a very slim chance of getting out of. I will give them a situation that looks almost completely impossible, but that's almost completely impossible. Math gets done. They figure out exactly what happened. They went into this black hole at this angle and came out this direction, and they traveled thousands of light years in an instant. And they can't use that math to go anywhere, but they can use that math to go back. And they did. The rolls were harder because it required more precision, and they were in a more difficult situation, but they did it again. The guy with the luck advantage on his character sheet, if he hadn't had it, they would have died, but he did. They made it back with a radioactive, mostly damaged ship that was barely going to be able to make it to port, but they had the mathematics and the diagrams not only for the shields that will allow them to withstand a black hole once or twice, but a way of traveling thousands of light years in an instant using a singularity. Those characters were going to vanish into obscurity as new technologies occurred, and the Empire was going to hold them very, very tight to its vest, reward them for the amazing amount of innovation that they brought back, and they were going to have a planet to themselves so that they would not be tempted to take the information anywhere else. Live like kings, and the Empire would be able to expand monstrously from that point on, changing the history of the entire travel of the universe. I don't do things small. It's one of my favorite gaming times. Just being able to come up with an idea like that and throw it to a group of folks and say, hey, let's do this. It's a one shot, but let's go for it. I still have days like that. I still have groups like that. The people that I game with now are amazing. Some of the same people. Some have departed through one means or another. But if you've got a good group, if you've got people that you trust and that trust you, and you have a story you want to tell, you can lay down just about anything in front of them. No plan encounters contact with player characters, and yeah. That's how you get from a movie that wasn't that well received and still is not that well understood, and you get to an afternoon you will never forget. Well, thank you for following me along on this particular trip through memory lane and how my brain works in memory of one of my favorite old bad movies. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like the video, give me a thumbs down. Feedback is feedback. If you'd like to see these videos as soon as they come out, and why wouldn't you, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If you do hit the subscribe button, hit the little notification bell so you're alerted as soon as the videos become available. If you have any questions or comments, your own stories of taking something from screen to game, or anything else you'd like to hear me talk about, or other subjects, leave me a comment below. You'll love leaving me a comment. I'll love getting one. If you'd like to help out in a meaningful way with the channel, go ahead and hit me up my Patreon page, www.patreon.com/ScottCorum, and consider donating. Absolutely anything helps and allows me to run better games more often. I'm currently running a game on Discord for a number of my patrons as a thank you for being there. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. I'm Scott Corum, this is What Has Mattered to Me, and I'll see you next time on the next Matters of DeCorum.